The great hall of Nexus Prime buzzed with soft conversations as delegates from 12 different worlds took their seats. The building itself was a wonder, made from crystal that grew like living trees and metal that sang when touched by starlight. For 3,000 years this place had been the center of peace in the galaxy. Ambassador Zethkar walked slowly to the speaking platform. His 6 legs clicked against the smooth floor as his insect-like body moved with careful grace. The other delegates watched him with curious eyes. The Vexani people were known for being careful and thoughtful, not for making dramatic announcements. Zethkar's translator box crackled to life as he began to speak. "Honored friends of the Council," he said, his real voice making clicking sounds that the machine turned into words everyone could understand. "My people have found something on the dead world of Kepler 442b, something that changes what we know about the galaxy." The hall grew quiet. Kepler 442b was a world that had been dead for millions of years. Nothing lived there now except the scientists who dug through its ruins, looking for clues about the past. "We found more pieces of the human codex," Zethkar announced. A wave of soft sounds moved through the hall, some delegates laughing, others making worried noises. Everyone knew about humans, but most thought they were just stories. Tales told to children about a race of beings so violent they destroyed themselves before they could travel between stars. Oranel, the representative from the Luminari people, made a sound like wind chimes, laughing. Her body was made of pure light, shifting between colors as she spoke. "Dear Zethkar," she said, her voice like music, "surely you know these human stories are just myths. No real people could be as violent as the tales say." But Zethkar was not finished. He pressed a control, and a holographic image appeared above the platform. It showed broken stone tablets covered with strange writing. "These are not myths," he said firmly. "These are historical records, and they tell us things that should worry us all." Dr. Korthalin rose from his seat. The old reptilian scientist was respected throughout the galaxy for his work studying ancient civilizations. His scales were gray with age, and his eyes held the wisdom of someone who had spent lifetimes digging through the past. "I have studied these fragments for 2 years, Korthalin said, his voice deep and serious. "The technology described in them is beyond anything we have ever seen. Ships that could travel faster than our best quantum drives. Weapons that could break apart moons. Most frightening of all, they describe a people who loved war instead of fearing it." The delegates began to talk among themselves. The Thakuri representative, Admiral Vosek, stood up. He was tall and muscular, covered in thick armor that showed his rank as a warrior. His people were the strongest fighters in the galaxy, and he did not like the idea that someone might be stronger. "Even if these humans were real," Vosek said with a growl, "they are gone now, dead for millions of years. Why should we care about ancient history?" Korthalin touched another control and the image changed. Now it showed a map of stars, with lines drawn between them showing travel routes. The delegates fell silent as they realized what they were seeing. "This star chart shows human expansion routes," Korthalin explained. "They stretch far beyond any territory that Council species have ever reached. Look at these coordinates." The map zoomed in on certain areas. These were regions of space that appeared in the oldest Council databases, marked with simple warnings. "Quarantine zone, do not enter." No one remembered why these areas were forbidden. The warnings were so old that they had become tradition, rather than active policy. The human territories extended into every one of these quarantine zones, Korthalin continued, and according to these records, they were still expanding when their civilization ended. Councillor Maxar of the Ethereals floated forward. The Ethereals were beings of pure energy, ancient and wise. When they spoke, others listened. "Dr. Korthalin," Maxara said, her voice echoing strangely, "you speak of humans as if they were a great civilization, but all evidence says they destroyed themselves through violence. How could such a people build an empire?" Korthalin's expression grew troubled. "That is what worries me, Counselor. According to these records, the humans did not destroy themselves, they simply left. The word hung in the air like a threat. Left? Where could an entire civilization go? Sethkar stepped forward again. There is more, he said. We found records of something called the Great Preparation. The humans were building something. Massive shipyards. Weapons beyond our understanding. And then, all at once, they disappeared from this galaxy. Disappeared to where? Asked Captain Rixall of the aquatic depth dwellers. Her gills fluttered nervously as she spoke. The records are not clear, Sethkar admitted, but there are references to the dark between galaxies and the Long Watch. It sounds as if they were preparing to fight something terrible. Ambassador Quintar of the plant-like Verdani people rustled his leaves thoughtfully. Perhaps they were running from something they had created, a weapon too dangerous to control. Or perhaps, said a new voice, they were running toward something they needed to stop. Everyone turned to look at the speaker. It was Dr. Nilara, a young scientist from the Crystalline Collective. Her body was made of living crystal that reflected light in beautiful patterns. She was known for having strange ideas, but also for being right more often than not. What do you mean? Asked Oronel. Nilara stepped forward, her crystal body chiming softly as she moved. I have been studying the energy signatures we find in those quarantine zones. They are not natural. Something artificial passed through those areas long ago, something that left traces in space itself. She activated her own holographic display. It showed the quarantine zones again, but this time with energy patterns overlaid on them. The patterns formed a clear picture. Something massive had moved through that region of space, heading in a specific direction. The energy trails all point the same way, Nilara explained. Toward the edge of our galaxy, in the direction of the Andromeda cluster. And there is something else. The trails are old, but not as old as the human records. Whatever made them pass through here after the humans left. The hall erupted in nervous chatter. The implications were clear and frightening. The humans had not been running from something they created. They had been chasing something that threatened the entire galaxy. Counselor Mayaxara's energy form flickered with distress. Are you suggesting that the humans left our galaxy to fight some external threat? I am suggesting that we may not be alone in the universe, Nilara replied, and that the humans knew it. Admiral Vosek slammed his fist on his seat. This is all speculation. Ancient stories and mysterious energy readings. Even if humans were real, they are gone now. We have built our own civilization, our own defenses. We do not need mythical warriors to protect us. But even as he spoke, alerts began to sound throughout the hall. The soft chiming of the building's systems was joined by the urgent tones of emergency broadcasts. Delegates looked at their personal communicators with growing alarm. The great doors of the hall opened, and a junior aide rushed in. She was Luminar, her light body flickering with excitement and fear. She ran directly to Counselor Mayaxara and whispered urgently in her ear. Mayaxara's energy form suddenly blazed brighter. She turned to address the assembly, her voice carrying new urgency. Delegates, I have just received word from our long-range sensor network. Ships have been detected at the edge of our solar system. Unknown ships, using technology we do not recognize. The hall fell completely silent. In 3,000 years of peace, no unknown ships had ever approached Council space. How many ships? Asked Admiral Vosek, his warrior instincts taking over. 3, Mayaxara replied, but they are larger than anything in our databases. Sethkar's mandibles clicked nervously. What kind of technology are they using? Quantum drives? Fold space engines? The aide whispered something else to Mayaxara. The ethereal's energy form flickered with what looked like confusion. They did not arrive, Mayaxara said slowly. They simply appeared. Our sensors show no energy signatures consistent with any known form of faster-than-light travel. One moment the space was empty and the next moment they were there. Dr. Nilara's crystal body began to pulse with excitement. Show us the sensor readings, she demanded. A new holographic display appeared, showing the outer edges of their solar system. 3 massive shapes hung in space near the orbit of the system's farthest planet. Even at this distance, it was clear that they were artificial, and they were huge. These ships are each over 3 kilometers long, the aide reported. Their mass readings are off our scales, and they are broadcasting something. What kind of transmission? Asked Captain Rixall. They are speaking Council standard, Maxara replied, her voice filled with disbelief. Perfect Council standard, and they are asking if we need assistance. The delegates stared at the display in stunned silence. Unknown ships appearing from nowhere, speaking their language and offering help instead of making demands. Admiral Vosek stood up, his hand moving to his weapon. This could be a trick. We should mobilize the fleet. Wait, said Dr. Korthalin. The old scientist was staring at the ships with an expression of wonder and fear. Look at their design. The angular construction, the way they seem to absorb light instead of reflecting it. I have seen these shapes before. Where? Demanded Zethkar. Korthalin turned to face the assembly. In the human records, those ships, they match the descriptions in the codex exactly. The implications hit the room like a physical blow. The humans were not extinct. They were not myths. They were real, and they were here. Orinel's light flickered uncertainly. But that is impossible. The human records are millions of years old. Are they? Asked Nelara quietly. We assumed they were ancient because we found them in old ruins. But what if the ruins were built around something much newer? What if those records were left as messages? The thought was too big, too frightening to fully grasp. An entire civilization hiding between the galaxies for millions of years, watching and waiting, preparing for something that the Council could not even imagine. Admiral Vosek's communicator buzzed urgently. He answered it with a sharp gesture, his face growing pale as he listened. When he finished, he looked up at the assembly with something like fear in his eyes. The defense fleet is moving to intercept, he reported. 7 battle cruisers, our finest ships. But... He paused, swallowing hard. Our scanning officers report that the unknown vessels are not even powered for combat. They appear to be in what we would call a maintenance configuration, and yet they wait, observed Maxara. They make no aggressive moves, but they also do not retreat. Dr. Korthalin was studying the ship designs more carefully. If these are truly human vessels, he said slowly, then we are looking at technology that is millions of years more advanced than ours. Ships that can appear anywhere in space without warning. If they meant us harm... He did not need to finish the thought. If the humans wanted to destroy the Council, they could probably do it, without the Council even knowing they were under attack. The question that hung in the air, unspoken but understood by all, was simple and terrifying. After millions of years of silence, why had the humans finally returned? And what did their arrival mean for everyone else in the galaxy? Outside, in the cold vacuum of space, 3 massive ships waited patiently for an answer to their offer of assistance. Ships that had traveled impossible distances using technology beyond imagination. Ships crewed by the descendants of a people thought to be nothing more than myths and legends. The humans had returned, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. 3 weeks had passed since the emergency council session, and Admiral Vosek stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Thundering Spear. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency, their scaled hands moving over controls that governed the most powerful warship the Thakuri had ever built. The defense fleet hung in formation near the edge of the system, 7 massive battle cruisers that represented the finest military technology the Council possessed. Each ship was over 1 kilometer long, armed with plasma cannons that could melt asteroids and shields that could withstand the heat of a small star. Vosek felt confident. His people were warriors, bred for battle across 1,000 generations. They had never lost a war, never retreated from a fight. Whatever these mysterious ships were, they would learn to respect Thakuri's strength. Admiral, called his tactical officer, Lieutenant Keksar, the unknown vessels are still maintaining position, no change in their energy signatures. Still in maintenance mode, Vosek asked. Yes, sir. It is almost as if they are not taking us seriously. Vosek's jaw tightened. That would change soon. Enough. He had given the aliens 3 weeks to explain themselves, 3 weeks to either leave or submit to council authority. They had done neither. All ships advance to attack formation, he commanded. Weapons charged but not locked. Let us see how they respond to a show of force. The 7 ships moved forward in perfect unity, their hulls gleaming in the light of the system's star. They were a sight to inspire fear in any enemy, a wall of armored death moving with deadly purpose. But the alien ships did not react. They simply floated in space like sleeping giants, their dark hulls seeming to drink in the starlight around them. "Sir," reported the communications officer, "we are receiving a transmission from the lead alien vessel." "Put it through," Vosek ordered. The main screen flickered, and suddenly the bridge was filled with an image that made everyone freeze. A human face looked back at them, exactly like the descriptions in the ancient records. 2 eyes, hair on the head, skin instead of scales or light. But this was no ancient carving or faded painting. This was a living being, looking at them with calm, intelligent eyes. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Indomitable," the human said in perfect council standard. Her voice was steady and professional. "We detected quantum distress signals from this sector and came to investigate. Please state the nature of your emergency." Vosek stared at the screen in shock. "Emergency? What emergency?" The only emergency was the appearance of these massive ships at the edge of their space. He found his voice after a moment. "I am Admiral Vosek of the Thakuri Defense Force. You are in council space without permission. Identify yourselves and state your intentions, or we will consider you hostile." Captain Chen's expression did not change, but something flickered in her eyes that might have been amusement. "Admiral, we have been monitoring this region for some time. Our sensors detected energy patterns consistent with archaeological survey equipment operating at dangerous levels. We assumed someone was in distress." "Dangerous levels?" Lieutenant Keksar whispered. "Our survey equipment operates within normal parameters." Captain Chen seemed to hear him despite the distance. "Your equipment is producing quantum resonance at levels that could destabilize local spacetime if not properly contained. We thought you might need assistance with emergency evacuation procedures." Vosek felt a chill run down his spine. Their most sensitive instruments could barely detect the energy signatures from their archaeological work, even at close range. How had these humans detected them from outside the system? "Admiral," Chen continued, "I should inform you that what you see here is just our diplomatic escort. We always send a small advance team when responding to potential emergencies. Our main fleet is currently conducting training exercises about 400 light-years from here." The words hit Vosek like a physical blow. Small advance team? He was looking at 3 ships, each one larger than his entire battle group combined. If this was just an escort, what did their main fleet look like? "Tactical," he said quietly. "Full sensor sweep of those vessels. I want to know everything about them." Lieutenant Keksar's claws clicked rapidly over his console. After a few moments, he looked up with an expression of disbelief. "Sir, the energy readings are impossible. Each of those ships is generating more power than our entire fleet combined. Their hulls are made of materials not in our databases, and sir—" "What?" "I am detecting weapon ports along their hulls, thousands of them. Each one appears to be larger than our main guns." Vosek's confidence began to crumble. He was a warrior, but he was not stupid. The tactical situation was becoming clear, and it was not in his favor. "Captain Chen," he said, trying to keep his voice steady, "you say you are here to help, but your ships are clearly military vessels. What kind of help requires such firepower?" For the first time, Captain Chen's expression grew serious. "Admiral, the universe is a dangerous place. My people learned long ago that sometimes the best way to keep peace is to be prepared for war. We hope we will never need to use our weapons, but we carry them in case we meet something that leaves us no choice." "Something like what?" Chen was quiet for a moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. "There are threats in the dark between galaxies, Admiral. Things that most civilizations never encounter because they never travel far enough from home. But Sometimes those threats come looking for new territory to claim. Before Vosek could ask what she meant, his communications officer interrupted. Sir, we are receiving messages from across the sector. Human ships have appeared in 17 different systems. 17 systems? Vosek's mind reeled. How many ships did these humans have? All claiming to be routine patrols, the officer continued. They say they detected concerning energy patterns and came to investigate. Captain Chen nodded as if this was perfectly normal. Standard protocol when entering a new region. We like to get a complete picture of local conditions before making contact with planetary governments. How many ships? Vosek asked, though he was not sure he wanted to know the answer. In your local sector? About 50 vessels on patrol duty. Nothing too serious. We keep our main forces in reserve unless there is a real threat. 50 ships. Each one the size of a space station with firepower beyond imagination. And this was just a routine patrol. Admiral, came another voice from his communications console. Priority message from Nexus Prime. The Council is requesting immediate contact with the human commander. Vosek looked at the screen where Captain Chen waited patiently. This was no longer a military situation he could handle with force. This was first contact with a civilization so advanced that his entire fleet might as well be armed shuttles. Captain Chen, he said slowly, the Galactic Council would like to speak with you. Of course, Chen replied. We would be honored to meet with your leaders. Should we proceed to your capital system? The thought of 3 ships this size appearing above Nexus Prime made Vosek's stomach turn. Perhaps 1 ship would be sufficient for a diplomatic meeting. Chen smiled, and for a moment she looked almost human in the old stories, friendly and approachable. Certainly, the Indomitable will accompany you. The other ships will remain here and continue monitoring local space for any signs of danger. What kind of danger? Vosek had to ask. Chen's smile faded. The kind that travels in the dark between stars, Admiral. The kind that views civilizations like yours as resources to be consumed. We have been tracking several concerning energy signatures moving in this direction. We hope they are false alarms, but... She did not finish the sentence, but Vosek understood. The humans were not here as conquerors. They were here as protectors, watching for threats that the Council could not even imagine. Admiral, Lieutenant Kexar said quietly. The alien ship, the Indomitable. It is moving. On the screen, one of the massive human vessels began to turn. There was no visible propulsion, no energy flare from engines. It simply rotated in space, as if the laws of physics were merely suggestions. How are they moving without engines? Kexar whispered. Captain Chen heard him again. We use gravitational field manipulation for sublight movement, much more efficient than reaction drives, and it does not stress the ship's structure. Would you like me to transmit some basic technical specifications? Your engineers might find them interesting. Basic technical specifications. As if the secrets of gravity control were something humans shared casually with new acquaintances. That would be appreciated, Vosek managed to say. Excellent. I will have our science officer prepare a basic introduction to applied gravitational dynamics. Nothing too complex, just the fundamental principles. We find that most civilizations can understand the basics once they have a strong foundation in unified field theory. Vosek realized that what humans considered basic was probably centuries beyond anything the Council had achieved. These were not just advanced aliens. These were beings who had transcended the normal limitations of technology and physics. Captain, he said, may I ask how long your people have been traveling between stars? Chen thought for a moment. Our first interstellar ships were launched about 800 years ago. We have been exploring outside our home galaxy for roughly 400 years. Most of that time has been spent cataloging threats and building early warning systems. 800 years of interstellar travel. The Council's oldest spacefaring civilization had been among the stars for less than 500 years, and humans had been exploring other galaxies, while the Council was still learning to build faster-than-light drives. Sir, came a nervous voice from the sensor station. I am reading massive gravitational distortions around the human ship. It appears to be bending space itself. Captain Chen nodded. We will be traveling to your capital system using our standard diplomatic approach. Slow and visible, so your sensors can track us easily. We do not want to alarm anyone by appearing suddenly. Slow and visible. Vosek wondered what their normal travel speed looked like if this was the careful approach. Estimated. Travel time to Nexus Prime? He asked. At diplomatic speed? About 4 hours. 4 hours to cross 12 light years. The fastest Council ships needed 3 days for the same journey. As the human ship began to move, reality seemed to bend around it. Space twisted like water, and stars appeared to shift position as gravitational fields, stronger than those around black holes, wrapped around the vessel. Admiral, Chen said, I should mention that during our journey you might want to secure any loose objects on your ships. Our gravitational wake can be a bit rough for vessels not equipped with inertial dampeners. Inertial dampeners? Technology that prevents acceleration from affecting the crew inside a ship. Surely you have something similar. Vosek looked around his bridge where crew members were already strapping themselves into their seats as the ship began to shake from the gravitational effects of the human vessel. No, he said quietly. We do not. Captain Chen's expression shifted to one of concern. Oh, I am sorry, I did not realize. Let me adjust our field generation to minimize the effect on your ships. The shaking stopped immediately. Somehow the humans had modified their gravitational manipulation to accommodate the primitive technology of the Council fleet. Better? Chen asked. Yes, thank you. Good. We should arrive at your capital in a few hours. In the meantime, perhaps you could tell me about your civilization? We always like to learn about the cultures we encounter. As the impossible journey began, Vosek found himself answering questions from a being whose people had been myths and legends just weeks ago, a being who could cross the galaxy in days, who carried weapons that could destroy planets, and who had casually offered to share technology that would revolutionize Council civilization. And through it all, one thought kept echoing in his mind. If these humans were so powerful, what were they afraid of? What could possibly threaten beings who could manipulate gravity and travel between galaxies? He was very much afraid that he was about to find out. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been going on for 6 hours, and the tension in the Great Hall was thick enough to cut with a blade. Reports continued to flow in from across Council space, human ships appearing in system after system, their crews politely asking if anyone needed assistance. Councillor Maxara floated at the center of the chamber, her energy form flickering with stress. Around her, the representatives of 12 civilizations argued in voices that grew louder and more frightened with each passing hour. 53 confirmed ships, reported Captain Rixall, her gills fluttering rapidly as she spoke. All of them massive, all of them armed with weapons we cannot identify, and all of them claiming to be on routine patrol. Routine patrol of our space, growled Admiral Vosek. Without permission, without warning. But Ambassador Zethkar clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. They say they have been monitoring our region for 400 years. Perhaps from their perspective, this is their space. The argument that followed was interrupted by a soft chime. The great doors of the chamber opened, and a figure walked in that made every delegate fall silent. Captain Sarah Chen entered the hall with the calm confidence of someone who had faced much worse than a room full of nervous politicians. She wore a simple blue uniform with silver insignia, and she moved with the fluid grace of someone comfortable with artificial gravity. Behind her walked 2 other humans, a man with dark skin and lieutenant stripes and a woman with short gray hair, and the bearing of a senior officer. Honored Council, Chen said, her voice carrying easily through the vast chamber. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. I am Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Systems Navy. This is Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez, my tactical officer, and Commander Elena Vasquez of the UES Retribution. Counselor Maxara's energy form pulsed with what might have been nervousness. Captain Chen, we welcome you to our capital, though we must admit your arrival has raised many questions. I understand completely, Chen replied. First contact is always complicated. Perhaps I can help by explaining why we are here. She gestured, and a holographic display appeared above her head. It showed a map of local space with energy signatures, marked in red. For the past several months, our long-range sensors have detected unusual quantum fluctuations in this region. The patterns were consistent with archaeological survey equipment operating at dangerous power levels. We were concerned that someone might be in need of assistance. Dr. Korthalin leaned forward in his seat. Dangerous? Our equipment operates within normal safety parameters. Commander Vasquez stepped forward. Dr. Korthalin, I presume? We have read your papers on ancient civilizations. Quite fascinating work. She paused, then continued gently. However, your quantum resonance equipment is operating at levels that could cause spatial distortions if not properly contained. We detected the signals from outside your galaxy. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Outside their galaxy? That was impossible. Their most sensitive equipment could barely detect those signals from orbit around the same planet. Commander, said Counselor Maxera carefully, you say you detected our signals from outside the galaxy. How is such sensitivity possible? Standard procedure, Vasquez replied matter-of-factly. We maintain sensor networks throughout the local galactic cluster. When we detect signs of emerging civilizations, we monitor from a distance to ensure they are not threatened by external forces. External forces? Asked Ambassador Quintar, his leaves rustling with anxiety. Captain Chen's expression grew serious. The universe is larger and more dangerous than most civilizations realize, Ambassador. There are threats that travel between galaxies, seeking new resources and territory. We have been tracking several such entities that appear to be moving in this direction. She gestured again, and the display changed. Now it showed a section of space far beyond the Council's borders, where something vast and dark was moving through the void. This is what our deep space monitors detected 18 months ago, Chen explained. We call them devourers. They consume entire star systems, converting matter into more of themselves. They have already destroyed 17 galaxies that we know of. The silence in the chamber was complete. Even the soft humming of the building system seemed to have stopped. High Counselor Maxera spoke first, her voice barely above a whisper. 17 galaxies? That we know of, Commander Vasquez confirmed. There may be more. The Devourers do not leave survivors to tell their story. Admiral Vosek stood up, his warrior pride overcoming his shock. Even if such a threat exists, surely the combined fleets of the Council could defend our worlds. We have thousands of ships, millions of trained fighters. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez could not quite suppress a sound that might have been a laugh. Captain Chen shot him a sharp look and he straightened to attention. Admiral, Chen said carefully, we appreciate your courage. But the Devourer Advance Force alone masses approximately 800 billion tons. Our scouts report that the main swarm is roughly the size of your largest moon, and it learns from every encounter, adapting to overcome whatever resistance it faces. The numbers were so large they seemed meaningless. Vosek tried to imagine a threat the size of a moon, made up of billions of individual attackers, all working with hive mind intelligence. Surely you exaggerate, said Oranel, her light form flickering uncertainly. I wish we did, Chen replied. Commander Vasquez, please show them the Kepler 438 incident. The hologram changed again, showing what had once been a star system. Now, there was only empty space where planets and asteroids should have been. Even the star itself was dimmed, as if something had been feeding on it. This system was consumed 6 months ago, Vasquez explained. Population: 4 billion sentient beings across 7 worlds. Defensive fleet: approximately 2,000 ships. Time from first contact to complete consumption: 14 hours. 14 hours. An entire civilization, gone in less than a day. Doctor. Nilara's crystal body began to pulse with rapid light patterns, a sign of extreme agitation in her species. How can we fight something like that? With preparation, technology, and cooperation, Chen answered. Which brings us to why we are really here. She gestured once more, and the display showed human ship positions throughout the galaxy. There were hundreds of them, positioned at strategic points along the edges of Council space. "We have been building defenses around your region for the past 2 years," Chen explained. "Early warning systems, automated weapon platforms, shield generators, but static defenses alone will not be enough. We need your help." "Our help?" Ambassador Zethkar clicked his mandibles in confusion. "What could we possibly do that you cannot? Your technology is clearly superior to ours." Captain Chen smiled, and for a moment she looked almost human in the old stories, warm and approachable. "You would be surprised, Ambassador. The Devourers adapt to overcome resistance, but they have never faced coordinated resistance from multiple species working together. Your diversity is a weapon they cannot adapt to quickly enough." The secure briefing chamber beneath Nexus Prime had never seen anything like this. Built deep underground and shielded against every known form of surveillance, it was where the Council's most sensitive military planning took place. Today, it hosted a meeting that would reshape everything the galaxy knew about war. Admiral Marcus Webb sat at the head of the table, his gray hair and lined face showing the weight of centuries spent preparing for this moment. Around him sat the senior commanders of the 2nd Human Expeditionary Force, their blue uniforms stark against the organic curves of the chamber's walls. Across from them, the Council's leaders leaned forward with expressions of fascination and growing dread. The holographic displays floating above the table showed images that challenged everything they thought they knew about the universe. "The Devourer threat is not new," Admiral Webb began, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent lifetimes studying an enemy. "They have been consuming galaxies for millions of years, following predictable patterns of expansion and consumption." Dr. Nilara's crystal body pulsed with rapid light patterns. "Millions of years? How is that possible? No civilization could survive that long." General Patricia Foster, her scarred hands folded on the table, answered quietly. "They are not a civilization, Dr. Nilara. They are a force of nature, like entropy itself, but with purpose and direction." She gestured, and the display changed to show a 3-dimensional map of local galactic space. Red markers indicated Devourer activity over the past million years, forming a pattern that made the Council delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. "They follow galactic spiral arms," Foster explained, moving from galaxy to galaxy, consuming everything in their path, then moving on when there is nothing left to feed on. They are completely predictable, which is both our advantage and our curse. "Curse?" asked Ambassador Zethkar. Admiral Webb answered grimly. "Because we have known they were coming for 400 years. Every human born in the last 4 centuries has grown up knowing that someday they would have to fight for the survival of all intelligent life." The weight of that statement settled over the chamber like a physical thing. 400 years of preparation. 16 generations of humans, all raised with the knowledge that extinction was approaching. Commander Vasquez activated another display, showing the current positions of human forces. The delegates stared in growing amazement as hundreds of ship markers appeared scattered throughout the galaxy. "This is our current deployment," Vasquez explained. "The 2nd Expeditionary Force consists of approximately 1,200 ships of various classes, supported by 47 mobile shipyards and 300 automated defense platforms." 1,200 ships? Admiral Vosek's voice cracked. "Slightly. That is more than our entire Council fleet." "This is one of 7 expeditionary forces," Webb said matter-of-factly. "The others are positioned around different threatened regions throughout the local galactic cluster." Captain Chen, who had been quiet until now, leaned forward. "Admiral Vosek, you must understand. We are not here as conquerors. We are here because this is what we do. For 400 years, every human world has been a fortress. Every asteroid has been converted into weapons platforms. We have weaponized our sun. We have built ships inside planets. Our entire civilization exists for one purpose: to stop the Devourers." The casual way she mentioned weaponizing their sun made Counselor Maxara's energy form flicker with shock. Your entire star is a weapon?" Dr. James Harrison, humanity's leading xenobiologist, smiled sadly. "Captain Chen is understating things, Counselor. Our sun is just one weapon among many. When you face an enemy that can consume entire solar systems, you learn to think very large. He activated his own display, showing a cutaway view of the human solar system. What the council saw made them question everything they thought they knew about technology and engineering. The sun itself was surrounded by a network of structures that seemed to drink in its energy and focus it into massive beam weapons. Planets had been hollowed out and converted into shipyards. Asteroid belts had been transformed into clouds of automated defense drones. Even the comets in the outer system carried weapon platforms. Every human world is like this, Harrison explained. Not because we are warlike, but because we have had 4 centuries to prepare for a single battle. The battle for the survival of everything we hold dear. Ambassador Quintar's leaves rustled with distress. How can you live like this? How can you raise children in a civilization built entirely for war? General Foster's expression softened slightly. The same way your people raised children during the War of the Seven Suns, Ambassador. By teaching them that some things are worth fighting for, and that preparation today means survival tomorrow. But 400 years, whispered Oronel, is not very long when you are preparing to fight gods. Webb said simply. He gestured, and the display changed to show tactical analyses of devourer capabilities. The numbers that appeared made the council delegates wish they had never asked. Individual devourer units range in size from approximately 10 meters to over 100 kilometers in length, Webb explained with professional detachment. They are capable of self-replication using any available matter. They can operate in vacuum, underwater, underground, or in the cores of stars. They do not tire, they do not retreat, and they learn from every encounter. How many of them are there? Asked Captain Rixall, though her gills indicated she dreaded the answer. Commander Vasquez consulted her notes. Current estimates place the approaching swarm at approximately 10 or 43 individual units. For comparison, that is roughly equivalent to the number of molecules in a small asteroid. The council delegates stared at the number, unable to fully process its meaning. A trillion individual enemies, each one capable of destroying cities. That is impossible, Admiral Vosek said flatly. Nothing could control that many units. They do not need control, Harrison explained. They are a hive mind with distributed intelligence across the entire swarm. Each unit shares information instantly with all others. When one learns something, they all learn it. Dr. Corthellen leaned forward, his scientific mind working despite his fear. How do you fight such a thing? How do you kill something that can learn from your attacks? Very carefully, and with overwhelming force, General Foster replied. The key is to destroy their ability to adapt faster than they can adapt to your attacks. You hit them with everything you have, from every direction, using tactics they have never encountered before. Which is where you come in, Captain Chen added, looking at the council delegates. The Devourers have been fighting humans for 400 years. They know our tactics, our technology, our patterns of thinking. But they have never encountered a coordinated defense by multiple species working together. Webb nodded. Your diversity is a weapon, counselors. The Vexani hive mind thinks differently than human tactical computers. Ethereal energy manipulation follows different patterns than our gravitational systems. The Kuri warrior instincts operate on principles the Devourers have never encountered. You are saying our weaknesses are strengths? Asked Zethkar. I am saying your differences are advantages, Webb corrected. The Devourers adapt by analyzing and countering patterns of resistance. If we can present them with too many different patterns to analyze quickly, we can overwhelm their adaptation protocols. Commander Vasquez brought up a new display showing the planned defense of the galaxy. It was a maze of overlapping fields of fire, mobile defense platforms, and ships positioned in patterns that seemed almost organic. This is our proposed defensive strategy, she explained. Human ships will form the backbone of the defense, providing heavy firepower and coordination. But each sector will be defended by mixed species teams using different tactical approaches. Vexani ships will operate in swarm formations that mirror their social structure, she continued. Ethereal vessels will use energy manipulation tactics that our enemies cannot predict. Thakuri warriors will lead boarding actions against Devourer command nodes. Admiral Vosek straightened with pride. Boarding actions, you want us to fight them hand to hand? General Foster smiled for the first time since the meeting began. Admiral, Devourers are machines. Incredibly advanced machines, but machines nonetheless. And sometimes the best way to stop a machine is to get inside it and break something important. Besides, added Harrison, human Marines have been training for Devourer boarding actions for 2 centuries. We would be honored to fight alongside Thakuri warriors. Your people's reputation for courage is known throughout human space. The compliment was clearly genuine, and Vosek's chest swelled with pride. To be respected by beings who could destroy moons with their point defense systems was praise indeed. Dr. Nilara's crystal body began to pulse with a different pattern, curiosity rather than fear. Dr. Harrison, you mentioned that humans have been training for this battle for centuries. What kind of training? Harrison's expression grew somber. Every human learns to fight, Dr. Nilara. Not because we love war, but because we love peace. Enough to die for it. Every human city has shelters that can withstand planet-killing weapons. Every human ship is built to keep fighting even when most of its systems are destroyed. Every human knows that if the Devourers are not stopped here, they will never be stopped. But we also train for something else, Captain Chen added quietly. We train to work with allies. Human history is full of wars where different groups learn to fight together against common threats. We know how to coordinate with other species, how to adapt our tactics to support your strengths instead of competing with them. Counselor, Mayexar's energy form brightened with what might have been hope. You truly believe we can win? Admiral Webb stood up, his presence commanding attention from every person in the room. Counselor, 18 months from now when the Devourer swarm arrives at the edge of this galaxy, they will find something they have never encountered before. Not just human defenses, but the combined strength of 13 species working as one. They will find weapons that think like Vexani, energy fields that flow like ethereals, warriors who fight like Thakuri, and coordination systems that adapt like humans. They will find a defense that no single species could have built, using tactics that no single mind could have conceived. He looked around the table, meeting the eyes of each delegate. Will it be easy? No. Will we lose ships and people? Yes. But will we win? He smiled grimly. Counselor, the Devourers have been consuming galaxies for millions of years. They have never faced humanity. They have certainly never faced humanity with allies. Besides, General Foster added with a dark chuckle, we have been preparing for this fight for 400 years. We have contingency plans for our contingency plans. We have backup strategies for scenarios that probably will never happen, and we have weapons that we have been saving specifically for this moment. What kind of weapons? Asked Ambassador Quintar. Captain Chen and Admiral Webb exchanged glances. Finally, Chen spoke. The kind that we hope we will never have to use, Ambassador. The kind that make destroying moons look like a gentle suggestion. The implications hung in the air like a promise and a threat. The humans had shown them casual destruction of celestial bodies with point defense weapons. What did their actual superweapons look like? For now, Webb continued, let us focus on preparation. We have 18 months to transform this galaxy into the most heavily defended region of space in the universe. It will require every ship, every world, every person working together toward a single goal. He gestured, and the display changed to show a timeline of preparations. The scope was staggering. Entire planetary industries to be converted, new ships to be built, defensive positions to be constructed throughout the galaxy. Dr. Korthalin, we will need your archaeological expertise to identify any areas where Devourers might have left scouts or observation posts. Ambassador Zethkar, the Vexani industrial capacity will be crucial for building automated defense platforms. Admiral Vosek, we need Thakuri warriors to train our boarding teams. As the assignments continued, each delegate began to understand their role in the vast machine of preparation. They were no longer just representatives of their individual species. They were partners in the greatest military undertaking in galactic history. One more thing, Admiral Webb said as the meeting began to wind down. From this moment forward, everything we discuss is classified at the highest levels. The Devourers have scouts throughout this region. If they learn too much about our preparations, they will adapt their tactics before they arrive. How will we explain the massive military buildup to our populations? Asked Maxara. Captain Chen smiled sadly. Tell them the truth, counselor. Tell them that help has arrived, and that together we are going to save the galaxy. As the delegates filed out of the chamber, each returning to their ships to begin the greatest mobilization in galactic history, one thought echoed in every mind. 400 years ago, humanity had looked into the darkness between galaxies and seen their own extinction approaching. Instead of despair, they had chosen preparation. Instead of fear, they had chosen hope. And now, that hope extended to every world, every species, every living thing in the galaxy. The humans had turned themselves into legends through centuries of sacrifice and preparation. Now they offered to share that legend with everyone who was willing to fight for it. The War Council was over. The real work was about to begin. 6 months had passed since the Great Alliance was forged, and the galaxy had been transformed beyond recognition. Where once there had been peaceful trade routes, now massive weapon platforms floated in the void. Where mining asteroids had drifted lazily around stars, now automated defense grids hummed with deadly energy. Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, humanity's newest and most powerful warship. Around her, the combined defense forces of 13 species worked together with an efficiency that would have seemed impossible just months before. The Defiance itself was a testament to what could be accomplished when different civilizations pooled their knowledge. Its hull was grown from Zephyrian biometal that could repair itself in battle. Its weapons were powered by ethereal energy cores that converted pure thought into devastating force. Its navigation systems used Vexani, hive mind processing, to calculate tactical solutions faster than any individual computer could manage. Admiral, called Lieutenant Rodriguez from his tactical station, we are receiving confirmation from Sector 7. The crystalline array is online and functioning within normal parameters. Chen nodded with satisfaction. The crystalline array was one of their most ambitious projects, a network of Shardai vessels that could harmonize their natural resonance frequencies to create weapons that existed in 11 dimensions. The mathematics alone had taken 3 months to work out. Any word from the Thakuri boarding teams? She asked. Commander Vasquez looked up from her coordination console. Admiral Vosek reports that the joint training exercises are exceeding expectations. His warriors have adapted to human tactical doctrine faster than we hoped. They are particularly excited about the new assault shuttles. Chen smiled at that. The Thakuri had taken one look at humanity's heavily armored boarding craft and declared them barely adequate for real warriors. The compromise design they had developed together was something that looked like it could punch through a planet's crust and still have room for a full company of fighters. Admiral, came a new voice from the communication station. We are receiving a priority transmission from Deep Space Monitor Station Alpha 7. Chen's expression grew serious. The Deep Space Monitors were humanity's early warning system, positioned at the very edge of the galaxy where they could detect approaching threats. A priority transmission from one of them could only mean one thing. Put it through, Lieutenant. The main screen flickered, and the image of Captain Maria Santos appeared. Her face was grim but determined, and behind her, Chen could see the cramped bridge of a deep space monitoring vessel. Admiral, Santos said without preamble, we have contact. The Devourer advance scouts have reached the galactic perimeter. 3 vessels, approximately 10 kilometers in length each, moving on a direct course for the core systems. The bridge fell silent. After 18 months of preparation, the moment they had all been dreading and anticipating had finally arrived. Estimated. Time to council space? Chen asked. 72 hours at current speed, Santos replied. But Admiral, there is something else. These scouts are different from what we expected. They are not following standard Devourer approach patterns. Chen felt a chill run down her spine. Different how? They are moving in formation, Admiral. Coordinated. And they are scanning everything they pass, not just looking for resources to consume. It is almost as if they are studying our defenses. Commander Vasquez looked up from her console with concern. That suggests a level of tactical thinking we have not seen from Devourer scouts before. Or, said Dr. Harrison, who had joined them, on the bridge for the final preparations, it suggests that the main swarm has learned from previous encounters and is adapting its approach. Chen absorbed this information quickly. Adaptive enemies were the worst kind. They learned from your tactics and developed counters faster than you could develop new strategies. Captain Santos, she said, maintain observation, but do not engage. We need to learn as much as possible about their capabilities before we commit to battle. Understood, Admiral. Monitor Station Alpha 7 out. As the transmission ended, Chen turned to address her bridge crew. All stations. Begin implementation. Defense Plan Omega. Contact all fleet commanders and council representatives. Tell them the wait is over. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of final preparations. Ships moved to their assigned positions throughout the galaxy. Civilians were evacuated from border systems. Weapon platforms charged their primary systems and ran final diagnostic checks. On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Chen watched the tactical displays with growing tension. The Devourer scouts had passed 3 of humanity's outer monitoring stations, ignoring the automated challenges and defensive positions as if they did not exist. They are definitely studying our defenses, Commander Vasquez reported. Each scout is scanning different aspects of our installations. One is focused on energy signatures, one on material composition, and the third on communication frequencies. They are preparing the main swarm, Chen realized, giving it information about what to expect when it arrives. Ambassador Zethkar's voice came through the communication system from his flagship. Admiral Chen, should we not attack them before they can report back to the main force? Negative, Ambassador, Chen replied. These scouts are designed to be expendable. They expect to be destroyed. If we attack them now, we learn nothing about their capabilities, and they learn everything about ours. Then what do we do? Asked he. Admiral Vosek from his position commanding the Thakuri battle groups. Chen studied the tactical display for a long moment. 3 enemy scouts, moving with purpose toward the heart of Council space. Behind them, somewhere in the dark between galaxies, a force beyond imagination was following their path. We let them come to us, she said finally. All ships fall back to position Alpha Prime. Let the scouts think they have found easy prey. Position Alpha Prime was a star system on the edge of Council space that had been carefully chosen as a killing ground. It appeared to be lightly defended with only a few platforms and patrol ships visible to enemy sensors. In reality, it was the most heavily fortified position in the galaxy. The Devourer scouts arrived exactly on schedule, dropping out of their faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system with the casual confidence of predators who had never encountered serious resistance. Admiral, reported Lieutenant Rodriguez, enemy vessels are conducting detailed scans of the system. They appear to be cataloging our defensive positions. Let them look, Chen said calmly. Dr. Harrison, are your biological warfare systems ready? Harrison nodded grimly. The Zephyrian virus bombs are loaded and standing by. If these scouts are transmitting information back to the main swarm, we will give them some very unpleasant surprises to share. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Let the scouts gather intelligence about the weak defenses in the system. Let them prepare to transmit that information back to the main force. Then, at the moment of transmission, unleash everything. Enemy vessels are moving toward the inner system, reported the sensor operator. They appear to be targeting the inhabited worlds for closer examination. All ships maintain position, Chen ordered. Let them get close enough to see our children. On the observation deck of the Defiance, a group of young beings from different species watched the approaching enemy with curiosity rather than fear. Human children played alongside Vexani larvae, ethereal energy wisps, and young Thakuri warriors. They had been born into a galaxy at war, but they had also been born into an alliance unlike anything the universe had ever seen. Admiral, called Vasquez, The scouts are beginning their transmission sequence. They are sending compressed data packets toward the galactic edge. Dr. Harrison? Virus bombs are ready. The moment they complete their transmission, every piece of information they send will be contaminated with our special gifts. Chen watched the tactical display as the three Devourer scouts moved deeper into the system, confident in their superiority. They had no idea that hundreds of ships were hidden throughout the asteroid belts, that the apparently harmless gas giant was actually a massive weapons platform, or that the star itself had been modified to serve as a gravitational weapon. Transmission complete, reported Rodriguez. The scouts are turning to leave the system. All ships, Chen said quietly. Execute Plan Omega. Show them what legends look like. The star exploded. Not literally. The fusion reaction continued. Normally. But the carefully placed gravitational manipulators that humanity had been building for 6 months suddenly activated, focusing the star's energy output into a beam of coherent force that lanced across the system in milliseconds. The first Devourer scout simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there. The next it was a cloud of component atoms scattered across several light minutes of space. The second scout had a brief moment to register the attack before the hidden fleet opened fire. Hundreds of ships dropped their stealth fields and unleashed weapons that represented the combined technological knowledge of 13 civilizations. Energy beams that thought like living creatures, projectiles that existed in multiple dimensions, and gravitational distortions that could fold space itself into knots. The third scout lasted long enough to attempt an escape, but the crystalline array activated with a sound like the universe singing. The harmonic resonance weapons of the Shardai tore through its defenses as if they were made of paper, reducing the massive vessel to its component molecules in seconds. All enemy contacts destroyed, Rodriguez reported with satisfaction. Total engagement time 4.7 seconds, but Chen was not celebrating. Dr. Harrison, status on the virus transmission? Harrison consulted his biological warfare displays with growing excitement. Transmission successful, Admiral. The contaminated data packets are already spreading through the Devourer communication network. By the time the main swarm receives the intelligence about our weak defenses, they will also receive several trillion engineered viruses designed to disrupt their biological systems. Will it stop them? Asked Ambassador Zethkar. No, Harrison admitted. But it will slow them down and force them to adapt, which will give us more time to prepare for the main engagement. Chen nodded and opened a channel to all ships in the system. Attention all vessels, this is Admiral Chen. You have just participated in the first victory of the Galactic Alliance. The enemy scouts have been destroyed, and their intelligence has been corrupted with our own special welcome gifts. Cheers. Echoed across the communication channels as crew members from a dozen different species celebrated together. But Chen was not finished. However, she continued, this was just the beginning. The real test comes when the main swarm arrives. They will be expecting easy prey based on the false information we just sent them. Instead, they will find something that no Devourer force has ever encountered, a galaxy full of species that have learned to fight as one. She paused, looking around the bridge at the faces of her crew, human and alien all working together toward a common goal. The Devourers have been consuming galaxies for millions of years. They think they know everything about warfare, everything about resistance, everything about what different species can accomplish. They are about to learn that they are wrong. For 400 years, humanity has been preparing for this fight. We turned ourselves into legends through sacrifice and determination. But today we discovered something even more powerful than human legend. Today we discovered what happens when legends learn to work together. 3 months later, when the main Devourer swarm finally arrived at the edge of the galaxy, they found something unprecedented waiting for them. Not just human defenses, but a coordinated resistance by 13 species that had learned to fight as a single organism. The battle that followed lasted for weeks and reshaped dozens of star systems. When it was over, the Devourer swarm was gone, scattered into component atoms by weapons that thought like Vexani, flowed like ethereals, fought like Thakuri, and coordinated like humans. In the quiet aftermath, as the Alliance fleet regrouped and began the long process of rebuilding, Admiral Chen stood on the observation deck of the Defiance and watched children from 13 different worlds playing together in the hydroponics gardens. They were the first generation to grow up knowing that when monsters came from the dark between galaxies, heroes would be waiting for them. Heroes who had learned that the greatest strength was not in standing alone, but in standing together. The humans had been legends, stories of impossible warriors who could destroy moons and cross galaxies. Now they all were legends, and the universe would never be the same. The stars burned cold and distant in the outer reaches of the Sagittarius Arm. Fleet Commander Zexthor stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Mighty Fang, his 4 eyes scanning the holographic display with satisfaction. 3,000 years the Crithian Empire had ruled the known galaxy, and every single species they encountered had learned the same lesson. Resistance was futile. Surrender was inevitable. The Empire always won. Today would be no different. His sensor officer had detected an unknown vessel drifting through space, clearly primitive, probably lost. It was small, barely the size of a Crithian courier ship. The hull was covered in strange angular plates and odd protrusions that made no aesthetic sense whatsoever. Zexthor had seen 1,000 alien designs, and this one looked like someone had assembled scrap metal in the dark. Open communications, he ordered. His translator device began working immediately. Unknown vessel, this is Fleet Commander Zexthor of the Crithian Empire. You have entered Imperial space. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in your immediate destruction. The message repeated 3 times in the universal frequencies. Zexthor waited. Around him, his crew moved with practiced efficiency. Weapons were already charged, ready to deliver a warning shot. It was standard protocol. Fire across their bow, watch them panic, then bring them in for processing. Simple, clean, effective. A response crackled through the speakers, translated by the AI systems. This is the UHSS Indomitable Spirit. Earth exploration vessel. We are on a peaceful mission of discovery. We mean no harm and claim no territory. We request peaceful dialogue. Zexthor clicked his mandibles in amusement. Earth, he had never heard of it. Another insignificant speck in the galaxy about to learn its place. He gestured to his weapons officer. Fire warning shots. Standard intimidation pattern. 3 energy beams lanced across space, brilliant purple streaks that passed within 50 meters of the human vessel. They were low-powered, barely enough to damage a shuttle, but they always did the job. Every species understood violence. Aboard the Indomitable Spirit, First Officer Marcus Chen stared at his tactical display in disbelief. 3 weapons impacts, unprovoked, hostile action. Captain, they just fired on us, his tactical officer reported, voice tight with controlled anger. Marcus took a deep breath. The Indomitable Spirit was an exploration vessel, yes, but like every human ship that left Sol system, it was built for war. Humanity had learned long ago that hope for the best, prepare for the worst was more than a saying. It was survival, shields up, defensive posture. Send another message. Tell them we are not hostile, but we will defend ourselves if attacked again. The message transmitted. Marcus watched the alien ships on his screen. 7 of them, each one massive, easily 3 times the size of his vessel. The Indomitable Spirit was outgunned, outmassed, and outnumbered. But it was not helpless. On the Mighty Fang, Zexthor received the human response with growing irritation. They dared to threaten the Empire? This primitive species in their ugly little ship thought they could negotiate. Increase power. Light bombardment. Disable their engines. Bring them in. His weapons officer adjusted the controls. This time, 12 energy beams converged on the human ship. Enough firepower to cripple a destroyer. The beam struck, and something impossible happened. The human ship's shields flared bright blue, absorbing the energy. The light show was spectacular, beautiful even. Cascading waves of electromagnetic force dispersing the attack. But when the light faded, the human ship was still there, intact, undamaged, not even drifting. Commander, their shields held, the sensor officer reported, confusion evident in his voice. No damage, no power fluctuation. The energy was completely absorbed. Zexthor felt a tremor of uncertainty. That was not possible. No ship that small could mount generators powerful enough to absorb a full bombardment. Unless, scan their power systems, he ordered. The sensor officer worked his console, then froze. Commander, I am detecting a power signature I do not recognize. The energy output it is enormous, far beyond what their size should allow. Aboard the indomitable Spirit, Marcus made his decision. They had tried peace. They had tried warnings. These aliens had fired on a peaceful vessel twice. Earth fleet regulations were clear. Defend yourself. Defend your crew. Never fire first, but always fire last. Tactical, target their weapons arrays. Disable only. Use railguns minimum velocity. Fire when ready. The indomitable Spirit's hull opened in 6 places. Magnetic accelerators, each one 30 meters long, hummed to life. Tungsten rounds, each weighing 50 kilograms, loaded into firing position. The targeting computers calculated trajectory, velocity, impact points. The weapons were simple, ancient even by human standards. Chunks of metal accelerated to incredible speeds. No energy signatures, no fancy technology, just mass and velocity. Physics did the rest. 6 rounds fired in half a second. They crossed the distance between ships in less time than it took to blink. The Crithian sensors never saw them coming. Energy-based detection systems could not track. Unpowered projectiles moving at a fraction of light. Speed. The rounds hit. The mighty fang shuddered as something punched through its forward shields like they were not even there. Alarms shrieked. 3 weapon arrays exploded in cascades of sparks and venting atmosphere. A second impact tore through the port side, shearing off an entire sensor cluster. A third and fourth round struck 2 of the escorting destroyers, punching clean through their shield generators and leaving gaping wounds in their hulls. Zexthor grabbed his command chair as the ship rocked. Damage reports flooded in, 3 destroyers disabled, 1 completely dead in space. His own vessel had lost 40% of its forward weapons, and they had not even seen the attack coming. "What hit us?" he demanded. The sensor officer was frantically reviewing data. I do not know, Commander. There was no energy signature. No particle beam, no plasma. It was solid matter, moving at .003 light speed. Our shields could not stop it because they are designed for energy weapons. Solid matter, Zexthor repeated slowly. They threw rocks at us? Very fast rocks, Commander. Very precise rocks. Another message came from the human ship. This is First Officer Chen of the UHSS Indomitable Spirit. We have disabled your weapons to protect ourselves. We do not wish further conflict. Stand down immediately or we will be forced to destroy your vessels. You fired first. We responded proportionally. Do not make us respond disproportionately. Zexthor stared at the small ship on his display. This changed everything. This primitive vessel had just crippled 3 Imperial warships in seconds using weapons his people had abandoned thousands of years ago. Weapons they had dismissed as crude and ineffective. How many more of those weapons do they have? He asked quietly. Unknown, Commander. But if their power generation is as strong as we detected, they could have dozens, maybe hundreds. For the first time in his 300 years of service, Fleet Commander Zexthor of the Crithian Empire made a decision that would have been unthinkable that morning. He ordered a retreat, all ships fall back. Emergency jump to rally point 7. Now, the Crithian fleet turned and activated their faster-than-light drives, leaving 3 crippled destroyers drifting in space. The human ship made no move to pursue. It simply sat there, shields glowing softly, watching them run. As the mighty Fang entered jump space, Zexthor composed his report. He chose his words carefully, knowing they would reach the Emperor himself. But there was no way to soften the truth. We have encountered a new species. They call themselves humans. They possess defensive technology that renders our weapons ineffective. They possess offensive technology that bypasses our defenses completely. They engage in what appears to be kinetic warfare using relativistic projectiles. They demonstrated both restraint and overwhelming tactical superiority. I respectfully submit that this species represents a credible threat to the Empire, and recommend immediate diplomatic contact rather than military action. He sent the message, then sat back in his command chair. 3,000 years of Imperial dominance, 3,000 years of never meeting an equal, and in one afternoon, a species they had never heard of had shattered that illusion with chunks of metal moving really fast. Back aboard the Indomitable Spirit, Marcus was already composing his own report to Earth Command. His hands were shaking slightly, adrenaline still coursing through his system. First contact achieved. Contact was hostile. Enemy force consisting of 7 large warships engaged us with energy weapons. Our shields held. We responded with minimum necessary force, disabling 3 vessels. Enemy fleet retreated, no casualties on either side, requesting immediate diplomatic and military support. We are not alone in the galaxy, and whoever these people are, they shoot first and ask questions never. He sent the message on the quantum link back to Earth, then looked at his crew. They were staring at him, waiting for orders. Young faces trained for exploration, now blooded in combat against an unknown enemy. We stay here, he said quietly. We watch, we wait, and we hope to God they do not come back with friends. But deep down, Marcus knew they would. Species that shot first did not give up easily, and humanity had just announced its presence to the galaxy in the loudest possible way. With tungsten rounds traveling at 1,000 kilometers per second, the galaxy would never be the same. 6 months had passed since Ambassador Chen's speech to the Galactic Council. The galaxy watched and waited, wondering if the humans would keep their promise. Trade between humanity and the Kelvari flourished. Human ships regularly visited Kelvari worlds, bringing technology and taking back exotic goods. The Kelvari were gentle beings, standing about 1.5 meters tall with soft blue fur and large eyes. They valued art, music, and peaceful commerce above all else. On the colony world of Pelshara, Kelvari families worked in vast agricultural fields. The planet was famous for producing a grain that grew nowhere else in the galaxy. 3 major settlements dotted the main continent, each home to about 17,000 Kelvari. The morning sun rose over the eastern settlement of Mirvakel, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Farmer Kelvin stood in his field, checking the ripening crops. His daughter played nearby, singing a traditional Kelvari song about the harvest. It was a perfect morning, peaceful and warm. Then the sky changed. Dark shapes appeared above the atmosphere. They grew larger, descending rapidly. Kelvin's datapad began screaming warnings. His blood went cold as he read the identification codes. Zivrathi warships. 12 of them, inside, now, he shouted to his daughter. They ran toward their home, but they were too late. The first beam struck the center of Mirvakel. The energy weapon was designed for destroying military bunkers, but the Zivrathi aimed it at civilian buildings. The settlement's central plaza vanished in a flash of white light. The shockwave followed seconds later, knocking Kelvan and his daughter to the ground. All across Pelshara, the same horror unfolded. The Zivrathi systematically destroyed all 3 settlements. They took their time, making sure their weapons caused maximum damage. They wanted everyone in the galaxy to see this. They broadcast the attack on open channels, ensuring every species with a receiver could watch. Within 2 hours, it was over. 50,000 Kelvari civilians were dead. The settlements were smoking craters. The Zivrathi ships hung in orbit for another hour, as if daring anyone to respond. Then they transmitted a message to the human embassy on Nexus Station. We have disciplined your allies for their disrespect. They chose the wrong friends. What will the mighty humans do about it? The message was signed by High Commander Thralzek himself. The response from Earth came 18 hours later. It was brief. Only 1 sentence transmitted directly to the Zivrathi homeworld and broadcast across every major communication channel in the galaxy. Evacuate your frontier worlds. You have 72 hours, that was all. No threats. No demands. No explanation. Just a simple warning. The Zivrathi High Council met in emergency session. Some members argued for caution. The humans had warned them after all, but Thralzek convinced them otherwise. They are bluffing, he insisted. Look at the numbers. We have 3,000 warships. They have 300. We have controlled 40 systems for 1,000 years. They have 20 systems they have held for 2 centuries. This is psychological warfare. They want us to fear them, but there is nothing to fear. The council agreed. Instead of evacuating, they mobilized their fleet. Every available warship was called to active duty. They positioned forces around their most important worlds. If the humans wanted war, the Zivrathi would give them one they would never forget. Meanwhile, human ships arrived at Pelshara. They were not warships, but medical vessels and transport carriers. Human doctors and rescue workers descended to the shattered settlements. They searched through rubble for survivors. They found Kelvan and his daughter in their collapsed home. Both were badly injured but alive. A human medic, a woman named Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, treated them herself. You are safe now, she said softly in perfect Kelvari. We will take care of you. But the Zivrathi, Kelvan whispered. They are too strong. Humanity cannot fight them. Dr. Okonkwo's face hardened. You let us worry about the Zivrathi. You just focus on healing. Every survivor was evacuated within 36 hours. Human ships carried them to safer Kelvari worlds. Medical teams worked around the clock. Not a single injured Kelvari was left behind. On Nexus Station, the Galactic Council held another emergency session. Species from across the galaxy demanded to know what humanity would do. Many feared a war that could spread across multiple sectors. Others hoped the humans would back down and avoid bloodshed. Ambassador Chen stood before them again. She looked tired. Dark circles showed under her eyes, but her voice was steady. The Zivrathi have killed 50,000 innocent civilians. They did this to mock us, to test us, to see if our words meant anything. She paused. In 48 hours they will have their answer. Ambassador, please reconsider, the Salvaran delegate pleaded. War on this scale could destabilize the entire region. Surely there is a diplomatic solution. There was a diplomatic solution, Chen replied. We offered it 6 months ago. We told everyone the rules. The Zivrathi chose to break them. Now they pay the price. Thralzek himself was present this time, attending via hologram. You are truly going through with this madness? Your little fleet against the might of the Zivrathi Empire? Yes, Chen said simply. Then you will be destroyed. Your species will learn a hard lesson about challenging your betters. Chen looked at him for a long moment. Commander Thralzek, in the 72 hours we gave you, did you evacuate any of your frontier worlds? Of course not. We do not run from threats, like then the blood is on your hands, not ours. We gave you a chance. We always give one chance. She looked around the council chamber. To everyone watching, remember this moment. Remember that humanity offered peace. Remember that we warned them. What happens next is not because we wanted war. It is because we will not tolerate those who murder innocents and mock justice. She ended the transmission. The galaxy held its breath. Betting markets opened on various worlds, with most odds favoring a Zivrathi victory. Some species began moving assets away from the conflict zone. Others prepared to offer aid to whoever needed it after the battle. In human space, something was happening. Ships were moving, though few could track them. Humanity's stealth technology was better than most species realized. Resources were being positioned. Codes were being transmitted. Military personnel were saying goodbye to their families. On Earth, in the Military Command Center, Fleet Admiral Marcus Cole reviewed the battle plan one final time. His staff worked around him with quiet efficiency. All assets in position? He asked. Yes, sir, his second-in-command confirmed. Waiting for your order. Cole looked at the clock. 23 hours until the deadline. He thought about the Kelvari families torn apart by Zivrathi weapons. He thought about the children who would never see their parents again. He thought about the message humanity needed to send. Then we wait, he said. We gave them 72 hours. We will honor that. But the moment the deadline passes, we show them what happens when you mistake patience for weakness. Across the galaxy, the 72 hours ticked down second by second, bringing the galaxy closer to a day it would never forget. Then we will know the true measure of our enemy, the Emperor said quietly, and we will respond accordingly. Grand Admiral, you have your orders. Assemble the punishment fleet. Find the humans. Bring me their surrender, or bring me their ashes. I do not care which, the Admiral bowed deeply. It will be done, Your Majesty. As the council filed out, Talara remained behind. The Emperor noticed and gestured for her to approach. You disapprove, he stated. I fear we are making a mistake, Your Majesty. We know nothing about these humans, nothing about their true capabilities, nothing about their numbers or their weapons. We are attacking out of pride, not strategy. The Emperor stood and walked to the great window overlooking the capital city. Below, billions of Krithians lived their lives, secure in the knowledge that the Empire protected them, that the Empire was invincible. For 3,000 years we have expanded, he said softly. Every species we encountered bowed to our strength. Some fought, all lost. The Empire stands because we never show weakness. If we appear uncertain now, if we hesitate, our subjects will question our power. Our enemies will see opportunity. No, Talara. We must respond with overwhelming force. We must prove that the Empire is still supreme. And if we are wrong, if these humans are stronger than we believe, then we will adapt, as we always have. But I will not show fear to an unknown species based on one encounter. The punishment fleet will succeed. It must. Talara bowed and left, her heart heavy with foreboding. She had served the Empire for 200 years, seen dozens of wars and negotiated countless treaties. Her instincts, honed over centuries, were screaming that this was different. The humans were different. But the Empire could not hear her warnings over the roar of its own pride. 3 days later, the punishment fleet assembled in orbit above the throne world. 50 warships, the pride of the Imperial Navy. Dreadnoughts, cruisers, destroyers, each one crewed by the finest warriors in Crithian space. Grand Admiral Kixtall stood on the bridge of his flagship, the inevitable conquest, and looked at his armada with satisfaction. This would be a lesson the galaxy would remember. The Crithian Empire did not lose, could not lose, would never lose. Meanwhile, in a secure conference room 3,000 light-years away, Marcus Chen stood before a holographic projection of Earth's military command. Admirals, generals, and civilian leaders filled the virtual space, all of them staring at the recording of the encounter. They watched the Crithian ships fire first. They watched the indomitable spirit's response. They watched the alien fleet retreat. And then they began asking questions. "How many ships did you count in total?" Admiral Sarah Okafor asked. She was the commander of the home fleet, responsible for protecting Earth itself. 7 in the immediate encounter, Marcus replied, but our long-range scans detected energy signatures consistent with at least 3 dozen more vessels within a few light-years. This was a patrol group, not a full fleet. We estimate they have hundreds of ships, possibly thousands. And their technology level? Advanced in some ways, primitive in others. Their energy weapons are sophisticated, probably more efficient than ours, but their shields are useless against kinetic weapons. They rely entirely on energy-based offense and defense. It is like they never considered that someone might just throw a really fast rock at them. A ripple of grim amusement ran through the virtual chamber. Humanity had spent 3 centuries perfecting kinetic warfare. It was cheap, effective, and required no exotic materials. A chunk of tungsten was a chunk of tungsten. Add enough velocity and it became a weapon that could crack planets. Do you believe they will retaliate? The Secretary General asked. Marcus nodded grimly. Without question. They attacked us without provocation. When we defended ourselves, they ran. But species that act like that do not give up. They will come back, probably with many more ships, and they will be looking for our homeworld. Then we need to be ready, Admiral Okafor said. I recommend we mobilize the home fleet, full deployment, and we activate the Porcupine Protocol in all colonial systems. The chamber fell quiet. The Porcupine Protocol was humanity's insurance policy. Every colony, every mining operation, every orbital station was surrounded by hidden weapon platforms. Thousands of autonomous drones, each carrying a single tungsten rod and basic AI targeting. They were cheap to build, easy to hide, and devastating in swarms. The galaxy was about to learn why humanity named its defense doctrine after a small Earth animal covered in spines. Approved, the Secretary General said. Admiral Okafor, you have full authority. Prepare our defenses, and pray we do not need them. But as the meeting ended and the holograms faded, everyone in that virtual room knew the same truth. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for 300 years. Not preparing to meet aliens, preparing to fight aliens, because humanity had studied its own history and learned one terrible lesson. When 2 species meet for the first time, the meeting rarely ends well. Someone always wants what the other has. Someone always shoots first. Humanity had decided long ago that they would never be the ones who shot first. But they would absolutely, without question, be the ones who shot last. The Crithian Empire was about to discover that there was something far more dangerous than a species that loved war. A species that hated war but was very, very good at it anyway. The mining colony of New Edinburgh orbited a dim red dwarf in what the colonists called the Scottish sector. 3,000 people called it home, working the rich asteroid fields that surrounded the system. They mined rare metals, built ship components, and lived quiet lives far from Earth. It was peaceful, remote, safe, until the Crithian punishment fleet arrived. 50 Imperial warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. Grand Admiral Kixtall studied the scans with satisfaction. A small colony, minimal defenses visible, a few cargo haulers, some basic infrastructure. This would be simple. Open a channel, he ordered. Let us offer them the chance to surrender. The message transmitted across all frequencies. Human colony, This is Grand Admiral Kixtal of the Crithian Imperial Fleet. You are in violation of Imperial space. Surrender immediately and you will be granted clemency. Resist and you will be destroyed. You have 1 standard hour to comply. On the mining station, Colony Director James McLeod stared at the sensor display with growing horror. 50 ships. 50 massive warships, each one bristling with weapons. His little colony had exactly 4 armed patrol boats, designed to deal with pirates, not a full military fleet. Get everyone to the shelters, he ordered, and activate the Porcupine Protocol. His deputy stared at him. Sir, we have miners scattered across a dozen asteroids. It will take hours to evacuate everyone. Then we buy them those hours. Activate the damn protocol. Now, deep in the asteroid field, buried in hollowed-out rocks that looked like any other space debris, thousands of autonomous defense platforms came online. Their basic AI systems analyzed the situation. Hostile fleet, colonial emergency, Porcupine Protocol active. Engage. Grand Admiral Kixtal waited the hour. No response came from the colony. Very well. They had chosen their fate. He gestured to his weapons officer. Target the main station. Disable their power systems. We want prisoners for interrogation. The inevitable conquest's main batteries charged. Energy built, ready to lance across space and cripple the human station. The weapons officer began the firing sequence. And then something impossible happened. The asteroids moved, not all of them, just a few dozen. Small objects, no bigger than shuttles, separating from the rocks and accelerating toward the fleet. The sensors barely registered them. Small mass, low energy signature, probably escape pods or cargo containers. Irrelevant, except they kept coming. And then more launched. And more. Within 30 seconds, 200 small objects were burning toward the fleet on chemical thrusters. Within a minute, 500. Within 2 minutes, over 1,000, Admiral. We are detecting multiple launch signatures from the asteroid field, the sensor officer reported. Confusion in his voice. Thousands of small objects. They appear to be autonomous drones. Drones? Kixtal repeated. Activate point defense systems. Sweep them from space. The fleet's automated defenses came online. Energy weapons designed to intercept missiles and torpedoes swiveled toward the incoming swarm. They began firing, and drones started dying. Each shot destroyed 1, sometimes 2 drones. The weapons were efficient, deadly accurate. But there were thousands of drones, and more kept launching. Each drone was simple, a chemical rocket engine, basic navigation, a single tungsten rod, and orders that were beautifully straightforward. Find enemy ship. Ram enemy ship. Detonate if intercepted. The Crithian point defense systems were good. They destroyed hundreds of drones. But you cannot shoot what you cannot target fast enough, and the drones were cheap, numerous, and expendable. For every 10 destroyed, 1 got through. The first impacts were almost gentle. Small explosions across the hulls of the Imperial ships. Nothing that could penetrate armor. Nothing that could breach shields. Except the drones were not trying to penetrate. They were trying to overwhelm. A dozen drones hit the destroyer Pride of Krithia. Another 20 struck the cruiser Glorious Victory. The point defense batteries tried to adjust, tried to target the incoming swarm, but there were too many. The fleet's sophisticated targeting systems, designed to track a few dozen incoming missiles, could not handle 3,000 simultaneous targets. Admiral, we are losing point defense emplacements, the tactical officer shouted. The drones are specifically targeting our defensive weapons. Kixtal felt the first stirring of genuine fear. They are drones. Simple machines. How are they coordinating? Basic networked AI, sir. They are sharing targeting data. When one identifies a vulnerability, they all know about it. And then the real weapons arrived. Mixed in with the swarm of small drones were larger platforms. These carried the same tungsten rods that had crippled Sexthor's fleet, but with more powerful magnetic accelerators. They waited until the point defenses were overwhelmed, until the Crithian ships were blind and desperate, and then they fired. 50 tungsten rods, each one weighing 200 kilograms, launched at .005 light speed. Admiral Sarah Okafor stood in the command center of the UHSS Washington, Earth's flagship and the pride of the home fleet. Around her, 200 warships hung in formation, a defensive wall between Earth and whatever might come from the stars. For 300 years, humanity had prepared for this moment. The moment when someone else found them. The moment when words failed and weapons spoke. That moment had arrived. New Edinburgh's report had been clear. The Crithians had found a human colony and attacked it. They had been driven off, but they would be back. The only question was when and where. Admiral Okafor did not intend to wait for them to answer that question. She was taking the war to them. The plan was simple and brutal. 3 strike groups, each consisting of 20 warships and supply vessels, would penetrate deep into Crithian space. They would not target military installations. They would not attack civilian populations. Instead, they would go after industrial infrastructure, shipyards, manufacturing centers, the capacity to wage war, and they would do it all at once, synchronized to the second, so the Empire would not know which way to look first. It was a strategy humanity had learned from its own bloody history. You do not fight a war of conquest. You fight a war of attrition. Make the enemy's victories cost more than they can afford. Make their defeats catastrophic. Make them decide that peace is cheaper than war. But there was another element to the plan, one that made Sarah's stomach twist with a mix of pride and dread. Psychological warfare. For decades, Earth's intelligence services had been monitoring radio transmissions from the Crithian Empire. They had learned the language, studied the culture, understood their fears and their pride, and now humanity was going to use that knowledge. Captain Zhang, she said, addressing the commander of Strike Group Alpha. Your target? The Varick shipyards, Captain Wei Zhang replied. Orbital construction facilities above their secondary industrial world. Intelligence suggests they produce approximately 30% of the Empire's military vessels. We jump in, disable the yards, broadcast our message, and jump out. 12 minutes on target. Captain Rodriguez, Strike Group Beta. The Thax Manufacturing Complex. Ground-based facilities. We will use precision kinetic strikes to destroy production centers while minimizing civilian casualties. Estimated time on target, 15 minutes. And Captain Okonkwo, Strike Group Gamma. The Hicks mining operations in the Talon Belt. Resource extraction for their war machine. We destroy the infrastructure, leave the miners alive, and make sure they understand exactly why this happened. Sarah nodded. Each captain understood their mission. Each crew was trained and ready. But she needed to make one thing absolutely clear. Listen to me, all of you. We are not butchers. We are not conquerors. Every target has been chosen to minimize loss of life while maximizing strategic impact. You will disable, not destroy when possible. You will warn civilians before firing. You will give them time to evacuate. But you will complete your missions. The Empire needs to learn that attacking humanity carries a price they cannot afford. Questions none came. These were professionals. They knew what was at stake. Execute on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. 60 human warships vanished from Sol system. They're faster than light drives bending space itself. They traveled through dimensions the Crithians barely understood, using navigation systems that humanity had spent 2 centuries perfecting. And they arrived at their targets within seconds of each other, despite being hundreds of light years apart. At the Varick shipyards, Captain Zhang's strike group appeared out of nowhere. Alarms immediately shrieked across the station. Crithian defense platforms began powering up weapons. But before they could fire, every Crithian communication frequency was flooded with a broadcast. The message was in perfect Crithian, delivered with flawless pronunciation. People of the Crithian Empire, we are humanity. For 80 years we have watched you from afar. We know your language. We know your culture. We know where you live, how you build your ships, and what you value. We did not seek this war. You attacked our people. You killed our explorers. You came to our homes with violence. Now we have come to yours. This is your only warning. Leave humanity alone or we will dismantle your empire piece by piece. Then the human ships opened fire. Tungsten rods lanced through space, each one targeted with surgical precision. Defense platforms exploded. Construction arms snapped. Docking bays collapsed into vacuum. But the residential sections of the station remained untouched. The civilian ships trying to evacuate were ignored. Only the military and industrial infrastructure was destroyed. In 12 minutes, 30% of the Empire's shipbuilding capacity ceased to exist. At the Thax manufacturing complex, Captain Rodriguez's group performed a similar operation. They broadcast their warning, gave the workers 10 minutes to evacuate the factories, and then reduced the buildings to rubble with precisely placed kinetic strikes. Not a single civilian died, but the manufacturing capacity of an entire world was crippled. 6 months had passed since the Treaty of Neutral Station. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The Crithian Empire, which had ruled unchallenged for 3,000 years, was no longer an empire. It was now the Crithian Federation, a voluntary alliance of worlds rather than a collection of conquered territories. The change had not come easily. When news of the peace treaty spread through imperial space, something unexpected happened. The subject species, the conquered peoples who had spent centuries under Crithian rule, saw an opportunity. If the mighty empire could be humbled by a species they had never heard of, if the Crithians could be forced to negotiate rather than dominate, then perhaps freedom was possible. The Velkar were the first to demand autonomy. A reptilian species that had been conquered 500 years earlier, they cited humanity's example. If humans could force the empire to the negotiating table, they argued, then clearly the old order was ending. They wanted representation. They wanted self-determination. They wanted to be partners, not subjects. Emperor Kha'Zix faced a choice. He could crush the rebellion with force as his ancestors would have done, or he could adapt as the humans had taught him. To his council's surprise, he chose adaptation. The Velkar were granted autonomy within a new federal system, and once that door opened, dozens of other species followed. It was painful. The old guard resisted. Some military leaders attempted coups. There were protests, riots, and brief conflicts. But Ambassador Talara worked tirelessly, using humanity's example as leverage. The humans, she argued, had shown that strength did not require domination. They had defeated imperial forces without conquering a single world. They had demanded peace, not submission. If the empire wanted to survive in this new era, it needed to learn from that example. Slowly, painfully, the empire transformed. The Eternal Throne became a symbol, rather than an absolute authority. The War Council became a senate, with representatives from dozens of species. Emperor Kha'Zix, to his credit, embraced the changes. He understood that the alternative was watching his civilization crumble as more and more worlds broke away. And humanity, watching from afar, quietly approved. They had not set out to topple an empire, but by refusing to be conquered, by demonstrating that different paths were possible, they had sparked a revolution, not through violence or invasion, but through example. On the orbital station Crossroads, which had become the new center of human and Crithian cooperation, Admiral Sarah Okafor met with Fleet Commander Zexthor. The Crithian officer who had first encountered humanity now commanded joint patrol operations in the neutral zone between their territories. It was strange, working with a former enemy. But both officers were professionals, and professionalism bred respect. "I have a question," Zexthor said as they reviewed patrol schedules in the station's command center. "One that has troubled me since our first encounter." "Ask," Sarah replied. "Your ships, your weapons, your entire military doctrine, all of it designed for warfare. Yet you went 300 years without a single major conflict among your own people. How is that possible? How does a species that understands war so well manage to avoid it?" Sarah was quiet for a moment, considering her answer. "Because we remember what war costs. Our history is filled with conflicts that achieved nothing except death and suffering. We nearly destroyed ourselves multiple times, and when we finally stopped fighting each other, we made a collective decision. Never again. Never forget what we are capable of, but never use it against ourselves. But you built weapons anyway, because we are not naive. Peace is a choice, but not everyone chooses it. We hoped we would never meet another species. But if we did, we wanted to be ready. So we built our fleets. We trained our soldiers. We prepared for the worst while praying for the best." Zexthor clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "And what would you have done if you had arrived in the galaxy and found it peaceful? If every species you met greeted you with friendship?" Sarah smiled. "Then we would have had 200 very expensive science vessels and a lot of explaining to do to our taxpayers. But better to have weapons and not need them than to need them and not have them. Your empire taught us we were right to prepare." Zexthor nodded slowly. "We were arrogant. We believed our own mythology. 3,000 years of conquest made us think we were invincible. You shattered that illusion in minutes, and in doing so you freed not just yourselves but dozens of species we had subjugated. The Velkar speak of you as liberators. The Fex call you the breakers of chains. You have become legends without trying. We did not want to be legends. We wanted to be left alone. Perhaps. But the galaxy will not leave you alone now. Other species have heard of you. Some fear you. Some want to ally with you. Some want to test themselves against you. You have announced your presence, Admiral. The question is, what will you do with that presence? Sarah considered that. It was a fair question. Humanity had wanted isolation, but isolation was no longer possible. The galaxy knew they existed. Other species were reaching out, asking questions, requesting contact. Earth's leaders were divided on how to respond. Some argued for maintaining distance. Others wanted full engagement with galactic politics. We will be what we have always been, she said finally. Cautious, prepared, willing to talk, but ready to fight. We will not seek conquest or expansion, but we will defend our interests and our allies. And if that means taking a more active role in galactic affairs, then so be it. But on our terms. Always on our terms. Zexthor extended his hand in the human gesture he had learned. Then I look forward to seeing what humanity does next. You have already changed the galaxy once. I suspect you will do so again. Sarah shook his hand. Let us hope the next changes are peaceful ones. Across the galaxy, in a small bar on the mining station New Edinburgh, James MacLeod raised a glass with a group of visiting Crithian engineers. They had come to study human defensive systems and in the process had become friends. It was strange, sharing drinks with people whose fleet had tried to destroy his home 6 months earlier. But that was the nature of peace. Yesterday's enemies could become today's colleagues if both sides were willing to try. One of the engineers, a young female named Sixera, asked the question that had been bothering her since arriving. Director MacLeod, your drones. They are so simple. Just a rocket and a rod of metal. Yet they defeated our most advanced warships. How did you know that would work? James smiled. Because we tested them against ourselves. Every weapon system humanity builds is tested against our own defenses. Our shields, our armor, our tactics. We assume that any enemy we face will be as smart as we are, as creative as we are, as dangerous as we are. So we build weapons that can beat us, and then we build defenses against those weapons. And then we build better weapons. It is an endless cycle. That sounds exhausting. It is, but it keeps us alive. Your empire built beautiful ships designed to fight other beautiful ships. We built ugly ships designed to kill anything that threatened us. Neither approach is wrong. But when they met, ugly won because ugly was practical. The Crithian engineers nodded thoughtfully. They were learning lessons that would reshape their entire military doctrine. Efficiency over elegance, function over form, results over aesthetics. On Earth, in the United Nations building, the Secretary General addressed a crowd of reporters from dozens of human worlds and, for the first time, representatives from alien species. The Crithians had sent observers. The Velkar had sent diplomats. Even some of the smaller species that had been freed from imperial rule wanted to establish contact. 6 months ago, the Secretary General said, humanity learned we were not alone. We learned it in the worst possible way, through violence and conflict. But we also learned something else. We learned that the principles we hold dear, the values we fought so hard to establish among ourselves, can be applied on a galactic scale. Self-determination, mutual respect, the right to defend yourself without seeking domination over others. These are not just human values. They are universal values, and we invite any species that shares them to join us in building a better galaxy. The applause was thunderous. Humanity was no longer alone, and the galaxy was better for it. Years later, historians would point to this moment as the beginning of the Galactic Federation. Not a conquest, not an empire, but a voluntary alliance of free species, built on principles that humanity had learned through centuries of bitter experience. War was possible. War was sometimes necessary, but peace was always preferable. And peace was only possible when everyone involved had the strength to defend themselves and the wisdom to choose not to. On Crossroads Station, in a quiet observation lounge, Admiral Sarah Okafor and Fleet Commander Zexthor sat together, watching a joint patrol group pass by. Human ships and Crithian ships flying in formation, protecting the neutral zone. 6 months ago, such a sight would have been impossible. Now it was routine. Do you ever regret it? Sarah asked. That first encounter, firing on the indomitable spirit. Zexthor was quiet for a long time. Every day. If I had shown restraint, if I had waited, if I had tried diplomacy first, none of this would have been necessary. But I was arrogant. I thought you were weak. I thought your small ship and strange technology meant you were primitive. I was wrong, and my people paid the price for my arrogance. But something good came of it. Your empire is now a federation. Dozens of species are free, and our two peoples are allies instead of enemies. Sometimes the worst mistakes lead to the best outcomes, perhaps. But I still wonder, Admiral. What if we had met peacefully? What if my first message had been one of greeting instead of threat? How different would the galaxy be? Sarah smiled. We will never know. But I choose to believe we would have ended up here eventually. Humanity was always going to defend itself. Your empire was always going to expand. Those two facts were incompatible. War was inevitable. But so was peace eventually. We just took the fast route. The fast route cost lives, yes. But fewer than a prolonged conflict would have. We hit hard, we hit fast, and we offered terms before either side was too invested in victory to accept peace. That is the lesson humanity learned from our own wars. End conflicts quickly, before they become generational. Make peace cheaper than war, and never ever fight a war of attrition you cannot win. Zexthor raised his drink, a human custom he had adopted. To peace, then, and to the unlikely friendship between two species that met in violence but chose to part in cooperation. Sarah raised her own glass. To peace, and to the galaxy we are building together. One where strength is measured not by how many worlds you conquer, but by how many you protect. They drank together, human and Crithian, former enemies now friends, and watched the stars turn slowly outside the viewport. The galaxy was vast and full of unknowns, but for the first time in 3,000 years the Crithian Federation was at peace. And for the first time in 300 years humanity was not alone. It was a good beginning. Not perfect, not without cost, but good. And sometimes good was enough. Somewhere in the void between stars, a human exploration ship detected signals from an unknown species. Captain Maria Santos read the translation with a mix of hope and caution. The message was simple. Hello, we come in peace. We wish to talk. She composed her response carefully, knowing that first contact was always delicate. This is Captain Santos of the human exploration vessel Horizon. We receive your greeting with friendship. We welcome peaceful contact and look forward to learning about your people. Please transmit your coordinates and we will arrange a meeting in neutral space. As she sent the message, she glanced at her tactical officer. Weapon status? All systems ready, Captain, but no hostile actions detected. They appear genuinely peaceful. Good, but stay alert. Hope for peace, prepare for war. That is the human way. And as the Horizon moved toward its rendezvous with a new species, humanity carried forward the lesson they had learned from the Crithians. The universe was dangerous. Contact was unpredictable. But with strength, wisdom, and a willingness to extend an open hand while keeping a weapon ready, even the most violent first meeting could lead to lasting peace. The galaxy was learning, and humanity was teaching, not through conquest or dominance but through example, through showing that it was possible to be both peaceful and powerful, to be both kind and prepared, to want friendship but to demand respect. The Empire had freaked out when they discovered humans. They had thought no one was meant to possess ships like that. But now they understood. Those ships, those weapons, that whole terrifying military doctrine, was not meant for conquest, it was meant for survival. And in a galaxy full of unknowns, survival required strength. Humanity had that strength, and they were finally, carefully ready to share it with the galaxy. The destroyer Pride of Krithia took 3 rounds through its engine section. The ship broke in half, atmosphere venting in a glittering cloud. The cruiser, Glorious Victory, lost its entire command tower, the impact so violent that internal explosions tore through 4 decks. Another destroyer, the Eternal Wrath, simply stopped moving as its reactor was pierced clean through. In less than 5 minutes, the Crithian punishment fleet lost 15 ships. Not disabled, destroyed, hulls breached, crews dead or dying, and the drones kept coming. All ships retreat. Kickstal roared. Emergency jump! Get us out of here! The surviving Imperial vessels turned and fled, activating their faster-than-light drives. The drones did not pursue. They simply hung in space, a glittering swarm of tiny death machines, and waited for the next target, On the mining station, James McLeod watched the Crithian fleet vanish and let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. His hands were shaking. His colony, his 3,000 people had just survived an attack by 50 warships, because humanity had built a defense system designed on a simple principle. If someone attacks you, make it cost more than they are willing to pay. How many drones did we lose? He asked quietly. Approximately 2,500, his tactical officer replied. We still have 4,000 active platforms remaining. And how much did each drone cost? About 5,000 credits, sir. Basic components, simple AI, cheap rocket fuel. The most expensive part was the tungsten rod, and we mined that locally. James did the math. They had just destroyed 15 warships, each one probably worth billions, using weapons that cost less than a decent ground vehicle. The economics of the situation were almost funny. Almost. Get a message to Earth Command, he said. Tell them the Porcupine Protocol works. Tell them the aliens came back with friends. And tell them those aliens now know exactly where we are. Because that was the terrifying part. The Crithians had found a human colony, which meant they could find more. Which meant they could find Earth. And when they came for humanity's homeworld, they would not send 50 ships. They would send everything they had. But James McLeod also knew something the Crithians did not. New Edinburgh was a mining colony, a small remote outpost with 3,000 people and basic defenses, and it had just destroyed 15 warships without losing a single person. Earth had 200 warships. Mars had 150. The belt had 300 more scattered across 1,000 installations. And every single one of them was surrounded by the same swarms of cheap, simple, devastatingly effective drones that had just torn through the Crithian fleet. The Empire thought humanity was weak, because they used primitive weapons. They thought kinetic warfare was crude and unsophisticated. They were about to learn a very old Earth lesson. The simplest weapon, wielded with skill and in sufficient numbers, will always defeat complexity. Aboard what remained of the punishment fleet, Grand Admiral Kickstill sat in his command chair and stared at the casualty reports. 15 ships destroyed, 2,000 crew dead, another 1,000 wounded, and they had not even reached the human colony's main defenses. They had been turned back by automated drones that cost less than a shuttle to build. His communications officer approached hesitantly. Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the human colony. Play it. The message was simple, delivered in calm, measured tones. This is Colony Director James McLeod of New Edinburgh. You attacked our civilians. You attacked our home. We defended ourselves using minimum necessary force. We could have destroyed your entire fleet. We chose not to. Consider this your only warning. Humanity wants peace, but we are prepared for war. And if you force us to fight, you will lose. Every single time, go home. Tell your leaders what happened here. And do not come back. The transmission ended. Kickstill sat in silence for a long moment. Then he composed his report to the Emperor. It was the hardest message he had ever written. But the truth could not be avoided. Your Majesty, the punishment fleet has been defeated. We engaged what we believed to be a minor colonial outpost. We were wrong. The humans possess defensive capabilities that far exceed our intelligence estimates. They can deploy thousands of autonomous weapons platforms at minimal cost. Our ships are vulnerable to their tactics. I recommend immediate cessation of hostilities and diplomatic contact. We cannot win a war of attrition against an enemy who can build 1,000 weapons for the cost of one of ours. He sent the message, knowing it might cost him his command. But Kickstill was a soldier, not a politician, and soldiers understood when they were beaten. The humans had beaten them. With rocks and simple machines and cold, calculating efficiency, the Empire had learned a terrible lesson today. There were worse things than meeting a warlike species. Meeting a species that did not want war but was terrifyingly good at it anyway.